Welcome to episode 10, yay, double digits, of the Torah Suites podcast. I'm Mendel Berlin, torahsuites@gmail.com. So nice to have you. This week's podcast is sponsored anonymously by Mr. Anonymous on the birth of a baby girl. He should have a lot of nachas from her and all of his wonderful children. Thank you, Mr. Anonymous. So these three old ladies are sitting and they're comparing their sons. Gertrude tells her friends, my son is the best. Every single morning he wakes up, he brings me a hot coffee and delicious cake, and he serves me dinner. An amazing, amazing son. And Rose looks at Gertrude and says, I don't want to put you to shame, but the truth is my son is really, really amazing. You know what he does? He takes me on vacations every other week, and he makes sure that I'm taken care of. He hires the best help, and he comes there and he schmoozes with me. He's an amazing son. And Barbara looks at both Gertrude and Rose and she says, you know what? You guys are amazing, fantastic, but my son, I gotta tell you, twice a week he pays somebody $200 and he lays on the couch and he sits and he talks to this person. And guess what topic they're discussing? Me! So, comparisons are part of life. We can't help it. We compare ourselves to other people. Sometimes we compare ourselves to people who are better than us, and we get jealous and frustrated. And other times we compare ourselves to people who we feel are lesser than us. We don't know, but we feel. And then we get a full sense of ego. But we all know that comparisons are really no good. As Mark Twain, famous author, once said, comparison is the death of joy. In this week's Parsha, we find Rashi making a startling statement when he says as follows. Moshe and Aaron are two brothers. We know Moshe and Aaron. Sometimes the Torah mentions Moshe first, and sometimes the Torah mentions Aaron first. Why? To teach them that they were both equal. Whoa! What kind of statement is that? They were both equal? We know Aaron was great. He was he was the first Kohen. He was an amazing person. The Jewish people loved him. But Moshe Rabbeinu, he received prophecy from Hashem. He was the redeemer of the Jewish people. How can you compare Moshe and Aaron? And Moshe Feinstein, in his Dorosh Moshe, actually gives two answers. The first answer he gives is that for the redemption, both Moshe and Aaron were needed. So in that way, they were both the same. But Moshe also gives a second answer. And the second answer he gives is fascinating, and it tells us such an important insight into ourselves. Moshe Feinstein says that Moshe and Aaron were both equal in the sense that they both fulfilled their potential in the world. You know, as a teacher, sometimes parents come to me in PTA, and one of the most toxic things they could ever say is, how's my son doing in comparison with the rest of the class? Is my daughter top of the class? That's such a toxic attitude because all it does is create misery. It creates a sense of running a race against somebody who was created with different set of circumstances, with different kind of life. The Rambam explains that everybody could be as great as Moshe. What does that mean? That's the answer. That everyone could be as great as Moshe. On their level, they could fulfill their potential. Just like Moshe fulfilled his potential, he was great, we could also fulfill our potential. You know, there's a famous story, I want to read it to get it right, about the Nobel Prizes. We all know about the Nobel Prizes presented for outstanding achievement in literature, peace, economics, medicine, the sciences. And they were created by a fellow by the name of Alfred B. Nobel, a man who really amassed a fortune. People would not even know this. He produced explosives. And what motivated this Swedish person to all of a sudden, right, his ammunitions manufacturer, to dedicate his fortune to honoring and rewarding those who benefited humanity, right? What was the thing that motivated him? And the answer is startling. When Nobel's brother died, a newspaper ran a long obituary of Alfred Nobel, believing it was he who passed away. So he was granted something that very few people in their lifetimes are granted, to read his own obituary. And what he read horrified him. The newspaper described him as a man who made it possible to kill more people faster than anyone else who had ever lived. At that moment, Nobel realized two things. That this is how he was going to be remembered, and this was not how he wanted to be remembered. Shortly thereafter, he established the awards, and today, because of his doing so, everyone is familiar with the Nobel Prize. Well, relatively few people know that Nobel actually made his money building explosives. So the truth is we can compare ourselves, but we can only compare ourselves to ourselves. As the U.S. Army says, be the best version of yourself you can be. Be the best you can be. We are only running a race against one person, and that is ourselves. Can we fulfill our greatest potential? And Mirz Hashem, with Hashem's help, God should give us the opportunity and the health that is needed to be the best we can truly be. So that was our podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. If you have any comments or questions, please email us. And if you are looking to sponsor, there are sponsorships available. Shabbat Shalom.